My name is David J. Harris Jr. Join me and millions of Americans around the country as we embrace liberty and freedom. This is the David J. Harris Jr. Show. Hello, friends, family from around the country and around the world. This is another episode with your host, David J. Harris Jr., and I am so thankful that I am still here on your social media platforms, or if you're listening via the David J. Harris Jr. podcast, that may be one of the main ways you can hear my shows and my interviews. Make sure you follow me on Rumble. That's rumble.com. Make sure you follow me on Spreely. That's Spreely. And send a text. If you want to be on my text blast alert to make sure you know where I go, if I wind up disappearing, send a text to 53445 and then just send my name, David, in the message. Send the text to 53445. Send my name, David, in the message. Today, I am really excited. Are you kidding me? I say it all the time. I had to make shirts with that saying on there because it's become one of my slogans. But I have the privilege and the honor of having somebody on my show today that is highly regarded and esteemed as the most intelligent man, the smartest man in the world, with the highest IQ potentially of anybody to ever even exist, except for obviously Yeshua, Jesus. But I know one of the things that Chris Langan is working on is the proof of Jesus. Well, I know that he exists. I know that he's real. But to actually be able to prove that, and Chris is working on that through CTMU, which is cognitive. Let me make sure I get this accurate. Cognitive theoretic model of the universe. Chris is an absolute brilliant man. But what I want to get into today with Chris is what he saw taking place months and months ago, beginning of last year, somewhere in there. He began to see some things taking place from the Democrats, from the mainstream media, that then basically boiled all down to what took place on November 3rd. So without any further ado, my special guest today, Chris Langan. Chris, my brother, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on my show today. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, David. It's my pleasure. Great to be here.
Well, I'm glad you could join us. I know you have a lot of property, I believe 100 plus acres that you live on, and you're kind of out there away from a lot of the luxuries that some of us feel are necessary. But I think what you have is absolutely beautiful. My wife would love to live out in the country, but we wouldn't have very good internet out there. So I'm glad we could at least have you on today with audio, and you're able to see what we're going to show as well. I've got some clips. But so thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome. And yeah, you're right about the situation here with the internet and so forth. But we make do as best we can.
Well, I've watched lots of your videos. Absolutely appreciate what you have to say and what you share and what you're trying to prove with CTMU. And I love that. I also appreciated the fact that as the most intelligent person in the world, potentially in history, again, except for Yeshua, what you began to see taking place and unfold from the Democrats and from the mainstream media, it set off an alarm in you, and you had to share a video of what you saw that you believed was taking place, which now post-election, Joe Biden has won the presidency. What did you see taking place that you were trying to alarm the people to?
Well, if we're talking about the video, I think we're talking about it's the fact that there was a riot there, and the announcer was telling people that there was nothing about which to be alarmed, that everything was pretty much, for the most part, peaceful, and yet there were burning buildings behind him.
Yes.
And this is, of course, anything but peaceful. It means that there were criminal activities taking place there, and it also means that the media was condoning these activities. And I find that extremely alarming, because there's nothing fair or truthful about it. So that was one of the things that set me off. Of course, I had suspected that something would go wrong long before that. We've got all kinds of this COVID-19 lockdown. Seemed to me it was being too readily exploited.
So, for anybody listening right now, obviously a lot of my supporters and followers, they've supported the president the last 4 years. I personally, as a Christian, I supported the president because he supported the standing up for the lives of unborn babies. That is a huge policy issue for me. That focal point is something that I just do not bend or break on. Yet he just, to me, showed so many additional reasons why he was putting Americans first. He was making efforts to reach out to the Black community. We saw the record low, historic low unemployment for the Black community, Hispanic community, Asian community, 50+ year low for women. Those are all policies and reasons why I supported him, yet the mainstream media never gave him any credit for that. Let me ask you, did you support Donald Trump, the man, back in 2015 when he said he was going to run 2016? Did you support him then?
Yes, my wife and I actually gave an interview to the Kansas City Star supporting President Trump, telling people that, he was an expert businessman who would know how to rehabilitate the American economy, and that he stood for certain things that we admired. And this, of course, was read by many people in Missouri, at least, probably in Kansas and other surrounding states. And I should perhaps mention that I met President Trump back in '95 at his place Mar-a-Lago down in Florida. I was there. It was a total coincidence, of course, but I have a pretty good instinct for people. And, I actually shook the guy's hand, looked in his eye, and my instinct is that he's a pretty decent person who says what he thinks. He's direct, and I think he's got a streak of loyalty in him. And I think that one of the things he's most loyal to is the United States and its citizens.
Coming from, and again, I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but the fact that you have the highest IQ potentially recorded, somewhere between 190 and 215, I hear, from everything that I've seen and studies and videos on you, for you to be the smartest, most intelligent person in the world, and for you to have those points that you make about the president, from shaking his hand to being able to read people, to understanding that his business acumen is what we needed for our country. Why do you think it was so hard, and it's been so hard for the average American to see those points?
Well, I think that we're subject to very heavy indoctrination. I don't think that the media has ever been quite fair to the president. I also think that the president was systematically blocked from the moment he was inaugurated. For 4 years, of course, there was the Mueller investigation, and all kinds of accusations were made, none of which stuck, indicating to me that the president must be a very honest man indeed. Otherwise, something would have stuck. Anyway, everything that I've seen about him indicates to me that this is a guy who has tried to do the best he could, but has been thwarted at every juncture.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I appreciate the fact that you actually recognized that if the mainstream media is going after somebody, especially somebody that seems like, the mainstream media, they didn't have a problem with him before he decided to run for president. He definitely got a lot of pats on the back. He got a lot of airtime. Everybody wanted to be like Donald Trump. There's 50 or so plus rap songs of rappers talking about wanting to be like Donald Trump. Nobody ever said that he was a racist. He's got the history of what he did with Mar-a-Lago in Florida when he opened it up to Jews and blacks, bought the thing. He said, you're not going to be that way. Yet, so for you to actually know those things and then see how the mainstream media began to treat him, that was a red light for you.
Oh, well, yes, of course it was. There's obviously something the matter there. And I think it was that he had his own money. He ran on his own principles. He made it clear that he was not a puppet for anyone else. For example, globalist oligarchs or the Red Chinese or whomever we might be talking about. He was his own man. And I think that this is something that the elite don't especially like. I don't think they trust a guy who can't be controlled, and Donald Trump looks like a guy who can't be controlled. And I think that's where much of his problem comes from.
Again, you nailed it on the head. I mean, it's so clear and concise. You'd think it would be that clear and concise to the public, but as you pointed out, we are beholden to the mainstream media. And I think people have forgotten that mainstream media is also called, media is called programming. Television programs where they're programming the people, and it's been an absolute onslaught. So you began to see, you have very good reasons why you supported Donald Trump to become the president. I think that, is it safe to say that he lived up to maybe some of your hopes, or how do you feel like his presidency went overall?
Well, I feel that he tried to do the best he could, and some of the things he's done, I love. You mentioned the unemployment, minority unemployment statistics. That's only one of the things that he accomplished. He actually did quite a bit if you go down his list of achievements.
Oh
But
yeah.
as I say, he was pretty much blocked and obstructed at every step. And that he managed to accomplish anything is miraculous, given that fact. And so, if anything, my respect for him has grown. The one thing that I could perhaps take exception to regarding the president is I never quite figured out how he managed to surround himself with so many, people who ended up stabbing him in the back. That kind of bothered me. I thought, well, he must not. But really, what it is, I've finally understood. This first thing that happens to a president when he gets into office is he's surrounded, he's isolated, and the flow of information to him is perfectly controlled. He
Mhm.
only had candidates that were presented to him by the people around him, and unfortunately,
Wow.
those selections that they gave him. And from whom he actually selected his cabinet, those were badly skewed in a certain direction. And so I don't think that was entirely his fault either.
That makes a really, really great point. That's exactly that. I know I've had that issue as well. I know a lot of my friends have as well. Is why is he surrounded by so many of these seemingly deep state swamp people when that's the whole purpose that he ran on, draining the swamp, and yet he's, like you said, he's gotten stabbed in the back over and over and over again. That it's just been hard. It's been hard to see a man that I believe has our country's best interest at heart, wants to put America first, wants America to be like any Trump hotel. I mean, I've stayed at his Trump hotels. The service is great, the pillows are great, the mattress is great. Everything is plush. It's like, let the man do that for our country.
Yeah, from what I hear, he's a very talented hotelier. I mean, I've never, unfortunately, had the privilege of staying in a Trump hotel, but I'm told it's one of the nicest places you can stay. And of course, he's got multifarious businesses. His name is a brand, of course. He's done very, very well. He's got a lot of business acumen, and I think he's brought that to bear on behalf of the United States. And that's what bothers a lot of people. I think that a lot of the people in our country, even those with a great deal of money, I don't think they're for the United States in any case where it can cost them money. I think that what they want is they want most of these people were overjoyed when our manufacturing base was outsourced and exported to China, for example, because that slave labor made them a lot of money. So this is one of the reasons that they didn't like. Well, Trump is interfering with that. According to their way of thinking, they had made a deal with China, which was that China was going to provide the labor for manufacturing products, and America would provide the consumers, and they would pocket the profit for themselves. This was their idea, and Trump was interfering with that. He was saying, "Let's bring jobs back to America. Let's move factories back to America," and I think that a lot of them took umbrage at that, and that's another part of the problem that he has had.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's just so disheartening that the mainstream media, they did, do you understand? What do you think the response would have been this last election had the mainstream media actually been honest and shared some of the truths that you're sharing?
Well, I think that the president would have won a re-election by a landslide, which parenthetically is what I think happened. I just don't think the media has been forthright about it.
You and I agree on that 110%. We're going to get back to that in a minute. I want your take on this. I was in D.C. last week with my bride. I was front row to hear the president speak. I heard his speech. I knew that we were supposed to be marching to the Capitol. It was freezing cold and windy. So after about 4+ hours out there that morning outside in front of the White House, my wife and I were almost frozen. We were really cold. And we decided to go back to our hotel room to warm up. Half the people went ahead and marched down to the Capitol. When we get to our hotel room, we turned on the news and saw the rioting that was taking place, or saw how the mainstream media was portraying it a riot. Now we also obviously know that people did storm the Capitol. Some people were actually just let in. We've all seen those videos, unless you're watching mainstream media only. Some people were let in, but then we've also seen the disgusting behavior that some individuals that were wearing Trump paraphernalia that I personally don't think were actually Trump supporters had obviously, we heard that people died, a Trump supporter died, 2 Capitol Police have died. But I didn't hear anything in what the president said to make it seem like he was rallying us to go cause any damage to the Capitol. Did you hear his speech that day?
Well, yes, I did hear his speech, and I don't think there is anything for which he needs to apologize. I also don't think there's anything for which the vast majority of protesters in the Capitol that day need to apologize. I think that protest is an American right, and I think they were just exercising their right. Now, as far as the people who broke in were concerned, I've seen videos of barricades being moved aside and them being waved in by uniformed police officers. Now, under those circumstances, I don't think that any of this can be blamed on the president. I think he was perfectly within his rights to call for, to tell the American people, show how you feel, go ahead, and have this gathering. He didn't advise anybody to commit any act of violence or do anything illegal whatsoever. As I say, he's got nothing for which to apologize. And I'm really, really taken aback by the attitudes of some of these Congress people who are screaming for his head. I don't understand it.
Yeah, they're doing it this week, but I mean, it's what we've come to expect, especially from Democrats. What's taken me back is how many Republicans are either silent or on January 6th specifically decided to not challenge or object to the certification of the Electoral College votes from the various states in question. They immediately just changed their tune. Kelly Loeffler did it. She said, I'm going to object. And she changed her tune that day. So many Republicans did it as well. What do you think was going on? I've got my own theories, but what do you think was going on for on that specific day when Congress is meeting, both houses of Congress are meeting to talk about and look at potentially objecting, and then all of a sudden the chaos ensues, and then you've got so many Republicans shifting their decision to object. What's your take on all that?
Well, there's only one way to interpret it. Obviously, they were being controlled. Obviously, that kind of coordination, that perfect coordination that goes against everything you've heard out of them so far, that can only come because someone flipped a switch and said, ostensibly, the people who govern our one-party system, what amounts to a one-party system now, told them, get in line or your career is over. They may even have blackmail material on them. I mean, that's one thing that tends to happen to people in high places. People get things on them and then try to use that as leverage to get them to do what they want. And I think that this is what probably happened to most of these people. Somebody snapped his fingers and immediately they came to heel, which tells us that whoever snapped his or her fingers is very powerful indeed. And I don't like somebody like that running our country.
Yeah, you and me either. I mean, that's not what I think any sane American would want for somebody to be running our country. So we know that there were deaths that took place. Most of the protesters were peaceful. There were agitators among us. I wasn't actually at the Capitol, so I'll say among us as far as those that were there to support the president. There were agitators there. I've shared videos in my shows where there were actually Trump supporters who were trying to push back some of the agitators, some of these guys that were shouting obscenities and death threats at the police. Their Trump supporters were actually blocking them from doing so and keeping the police safe. Yet everything we've heard since last week, since this took place, has been it was an insurrection. These were terrorists. This was a domestic terrorist activity. The president's to blame. He incited all of his people. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that you're 100% correct. Basically, this is a coordinated congressional media campaign. They seem to be in cahoots, and they're trying to paint a very bad picture indeed of President Trump. I don't think that any of it is justified. I think that Trump supporters actually were, as you say, trying to protect the Capitol from those who would assault it. And I think that there's no question that they should be congratulated for what they did, rather than called domestic terrorists and white supremacists and all of the things, all of the insults that have been hurled at them and the president. I think that this is a manifest injustice. I think that it should stop immediately. Obviously, there's something going on here. I mean, the Republicans were probably trying to, they were probably sitting on the fence, as politicians often do, figuring, well, we'll just wait and see how it goes. and then drop off on the correct side of the fence and thusly insulate ourselves and protect ourselves from any consequences of making the wrong decision. Then when they saw that, they saw the reaction, the mad dog foaming at the mouth reaction of the Democrats in Congress, they decided that discretion was the better part of valor and immediately plopped over on the leftward side of the fence. And that's why we're getting this now. It's just a kind of a sort of herd psychosis that these people have.
Well, you nailed it. Let's take a look at what the mainstream media was actually saying before during last year's continual riots, and so in multiple cities across the country, mostly Democrat-controlled cities. I'd like your take on that as well. But let's take a look at how the mainstream media was responding and calling actual riots where they're actually burning buildings down. I'd like your take.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis.
They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's, no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I don't care that much about statues.
Shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Do not get it twisted and think that, this is something that has never happened before, and then this is so terrible, and where are we, and these savages and all of that. This is how this country was started.
People get mad, and people get sick of it. People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Most of the major movements in American history have started at the grassroots level and at some point have turned into direct conflict with American government. So remember your history before you judge your present.
Remember your history before you judge your present. Mainstream media outlet after outlet after outlet giving a pass to all the riots that we saw took place last year. And then the one seemingly, it lasted literally a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, and they started to disperse. Wasn't even half of a day at most. And now we hear how they're talking about it. What do you think what are we dealing with here? What's going on?
Well, you're dealing with people that have no business talking about morality or history because they don't know a thing about either. It's basically what it comes down to is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if you're rioting and if there's something that they can get out of those riots, or if those riots somehow support their cause or sow chaos so that they can take greater power in the aftermath, then they go for it. But if it's just American citizens coming to Washington, D.C. to make sure that a presidential election is not stolen from them, then suddenly the sky falls. And this is it's total nonsense. I don't understand how any self-respecting, intelligent person can swallow something like that. That's my problem with it.
Well, that's my problem too, Chris. Again, as the smartest person in the world with an IQ of 190 to 215, somewhere in there, off the charts, for you to have the opinion that how could any intelligent person not see this is one thing. I'm nowhere near that IQ. I'm sure, I guarantee you, and I still see it. I say the same thing. How could any well-meaning, patriotic American person with any ounce of intelligence, and there's a lot of intelligent people out there that still believe that Democrats are in the right. There's independents that believe that Biden would make a better president. I don't understand it, Chris. I just really don't understand it.
Well, then that speaks to your intelligence. You obviously have an IQ that is high enough so that you realize these facts. But a lot of people apparently don't. Either that or they're very, very afraid of something, and they're afraid to actually speak their minds and be honest about what they're seeing. And that's, in a way, even more scary. Either people are super dumb or they're super scared. And the fact that we have people running things in this country that put this kind of fear into their fellow citizens, that to me is scary.
That's very scary. I just had to laugh. They're either really dumb or really afraid. I don't know which one it is, but that seems to sum it up really, really good. I've got to take a real quick break, Chris. Let me bring you right back up in just a second. I'm absolutely loving this, friends. If you love my show, if you want to support me, and wherever my show may go, please do yourself a favor. Support yourself. Go to mypillow.com and use the code Trump2020, just because it feels so good to put that in there. And I believe that you will love whatever you get. He's got mattress toppers, which my wife and I absolutely love. We love his robes. He's got new flannel, Giza sheets. He's got a lot of stuff there. He's a patriot that supports this president, that support our current president, that supports America, and he's taking a beating right now. I talked to him yesterday, and he said that over the backlash of all that's taking place, he's having retailers that are talking about yanking his products. So go to mypillow.com, use the code Trump2020 for the best discounts on anything in the store, and that'll let Mike know that you heard it here. Go to mypillow.com and use that Trump2020. All right, Chris. Back to you. I'm still chuckling at that. People are either really dumb or really scared. But it's a sad state of affairs for our country to be in, for so many people to be in support and be okay with the mainstream media, with the way they're portraying Melania Trump. I don't have it queued up, but I saw a video of one of her ex-advisors, which is exactly points to what you shared as far as the people that were around Donald Trump and Melania. One of her ex-advisors is throwing her under the bus, humiliating her, saying that she's responsible for all of this, and then saying she's not human.
Are you serious? Now that's a new one to me. I mean, I haven't heard that. I mean, there's very little about Melania Trump that you can criticize. I mean, she's been very decorous. She has actually maintained her dignity throughout all of this. She's a lovely person, a lovely woman. She's a philanthropist. Yes. I mean, what could anybody possibly say about her, that is negative? I don't understand that.
I don't either. I was looking for the clip here so that I could show you. Yep, I found it. Let me, you've got to see it, because what they're doing, what they're saying and doing to Melania, I try to tell my audience, they're not going to stop there. They're, I believe it was John Brennan, the former acting director of the CIA, actually came out and basically said that in order to really squash what took place at the Capitol last week, it's going to take, he referred to us as a malignancy. The 75 million Americans that voted for the president, he referred to us as a malignancy. So it doesn't stop at Melania. It goes to all of us. It goes to you, Chris.
Yes. Well, fortunately, I think the CIA, like any of the alphabet agencies, it has factions in it. And this person sounds like a very malignant, the center of a malignant faction himself. So, but that really bothers me. I mean, I'm not calling anybody else names. Why are they calling me names? All I did was vote for someone who I thought was the better candidate. And look at this. I mean, these people are coming out of the woodwork with all kinds of epithets, saying that we need to, was it Meghan McCain that claims that we Trump voters need to be put in Gitmo? She said that in the last couple of. I mean, and Nancy Pelosi, and Hillary with her speeches on deplorables and so forth. It's disgusting. I mean, these people are not nice. They're not nice people. They don't appear to be good people. How can they maintain a semblance of morality when they do this kind of thing? They're giving no trust and no credit to their fellow citizens at all. It's just us against them. We want all the power and we want them to have none. In fact, we want them all dead. What kind of attitude is that on the part of leaders?
Yeah, especially coming from leaders. I don't think, Joe Biden didn't wait very long to turn the entire ordeal at the Capitol into a race issue. What do you think is the issue? Explain to us, again, with your, amazing intelligence. God obviously gifted you very, very amazingly. What would you say? Why is it always, seemingly from the left and the mainstream media, why do they continue to make it a race issue?
Well, basically, the left, they want a transition. Basically, they're looking at the the rich, and they're somehow setting themselves apart from the rich, and they want to transfer of power. Basically, they want to. These people came out of the '60s, power to the people and all that. This is their mantra. We want power and wealth transferred to those of us who have none. The problem is these people have plenty of wealth and power. They got a lot more than I ever had, and they're pretending that they've got none. They're pretending to be the people. They aren't.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the people anymore. They are the rich and powerful, and they need to admit it, right? And they can't. They have no. There's no moral vantage from which they can look down on the rest of us. It's simply not there. But they convince themselves, because they want power so badly, that they have some kind of innate superiority to the rest of us. And apparently that superiority, that feeling of aggression and haughtiness, it feels them entitled to say that we should all be exterminated, and that we're a malignancy, and that we belong in Gitmo. I mean, these are horrible things to say. What kind of people say them? Not the kind of people we want as our leaders, or as deep state bureaucrats in the CIA or anywhere else.
Yeah, no, we absolutely don't. It's a divide and conquer, I believe. Divide and conquer, and divide any way you can, and divide among race, class, make everybody feel like they're missing out. Somebody else took something from them. They're owed something from somebody else. Ultimately, it's about power and control, I believe. They want all the power, as you said. They want all the control. Well, there's only one system of governance that'll allow that, and that's communism. Socialism, communism. They have the power. They have the control of us, the people.
Well, yes, and of course, democracy is also a system or having a constitutional republic with its democratic elements is the way for them to get that power. It's the way for them to get to communism. They come into a country where you can vote and steal a few elections, and pretty soon what you have is communism.
Wow,
and that's what they're doing to us.
Wow.
And of course, communism. When I say communism really isn't that different from fascism. What they want is a hive society in which they're at the center of the hive and work by corporate fascism, same as they always have, and everybody else then is supposed to be communistic. Why? Communists are a lot cheaper to take care of. When you've got a communist society, you don't have to give anything to anybody. So they want this neo-feudalistic form of government where they're at the top and everybody else is down at the bottom. And we, who are slated to be the underclass, are supposed to look at the oligarchs and say, these are our party leaders, and this is communism. Whereas they look at them and say, no, these are the Führer. These are the leaders of our corporate fascistic government among ourselves, and these two different perspectives merge, because what do they have in common? A group of oligarchs having everything while everybody else has nothing. And that's basically what we've been set up for. We're supposed to be communistic, they're supposed to be fascistic, and all merged into one great big system, one big hive system in which they're at the center of the hive and everybody else is a drone or a worker on the periphery.
And that's basically like the global cabal that I've heard it referred to. I've referred to it myself, the global elites that want to control everything, be at the center of the hive. And we're all the little worker bees that do everything that they want and need, and we're beholden to them for everything that we need.
Exactly. I mean, you've got a bunch of little, toadies and slaves, and they're going to do whatever you need them to. Well, meanwhile, you enjoy the high life. You live in palaces and you run around and you jet around in your huge, monstrous corporate jets, belching out great big clouds of CO2 as you deplore anthropic global warming and the terrible carbon footprint of us little people. I mean, this is what it's all leading to. They have everything. They get all the favorable attention. They have the moral high ground, and everybody else is just whale dung on the bottom of the ocean.
So I think you said earlier, you can reiterate, Trump was basically standing in the way of that. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly right. He actually feels loyalty to the U.S. and its citizens. And this is something that they can't stomach because they want everything that we have. They want us out of the picture, as you said, divide and conquer. And what they're doing is they're setting us against each other, putting us at each other's throats so that we have no cohesion. And without cohesion, we have no collective power. And once we're without power, then they can simply move in and take over. That's been the plan from Jump Street. If you go back and read their documents, it goes back a long time. But this is what they want. They've made it very clear, if you're able to read, if you know what to read. But they've been writing about it for the last century at least. So there's really no mystery about it, and there's really no way you can say it's not happening, because it is. I mean, when George H.W. Bush was president, he talked about the New World Order, which is talking about, that's what we're talking about here.
Yes.
It's coming about, and this is the way it's happening. It's not happening by moral or lawful means. It's happening by criminal activity and immoral behavior. And this is what people have to understand. Okay.
It is absolutely crazy that we're seeing it unfold. I personally believe we're literally seeing it unfold right now. I also am personally praying for and believing for a miracle and for a lot to be exposed. I think we've shared and covered that. I think it's safe to say that we don't believe 80 million people voted for Joe Biden.
That's correct. That's for sure. I mean, you take a look at the guy, he's just not a viable candidate. He's had a couple of brain aneurysms, which means technically he's brain damaged. You can see it in his speech. He's been implicated in improprieties with his son and their dealings in the Ukraine and elsewhere. Any of these things that any of the warts that he is showing would in years past have been sufficient to totally destroy the campaigns of any presidential candidate. And yet there he is, beating, with a record number of votes, just towering above, above Hillary, above Obama, above everybody else that got a huge number of votes in the past. There he is, up on the pinnacle. How does that happen? Okay, it's just nonsensical is what it is, and anybody who swallows it is, as I say, got a problem, either an IQ problem or a fear problem.
You make it so clear, Chris. It's so clear and concise. It's hard to understand why anybody would think it's any other. It happened any other way. There's no way he would have gotten those votes, and as you said, beat out more votes than Obama ever got, more votes than Hillary ever got, with the issues that he's had, with literally brain damage issues. So, what do you think if nothing changes? What do you expect? What do you think will take place in the United States underneath a Joe Biden presidency?
A lot of bad stuff, pretty much. I don't think that Joe is really has anything beneficial in mind for us. He's a flunky of the financial oligarchy. He stands accused of high-level self-dealing in connection with the enterprises of his son Hunter. He is the victim of brain aneurysms. He appears incapable of high-level cognition. He'll probably hand the reins to Harris in short order because he won't be able to function on his own. Now, Kamala Harris is a hard socialist who shows nothing resembling the level of ability and understanding that we need in a leader. Right? This pair bodes nothing but ill for the U.S. They'll throw open its borders, grant citizenship to millions of unassimilable America-hating migrants. They'll empty the prisons. They'll mandate vaccine tyranny, function as globalist pawns, destroy the economy, and destroy our constitutional rights and freedoms. That should about sum it up.
Which is exactly why I'm hoping and believing for something miraculous to happen in the next couple of weeks, Chris.
Well,
because
fortunately, God exists, and maybe we will get a miracle, but maybe we're going to have to work for it. No matter how things go right now at this moment, there is still a chance for God to intercede, so to speak, and for us to pull it out of the fire. And I hope we do that.
I hope we do too. If you have a little bit more time, I'd like to get your take on Bill Gates. Do you have an opinion on Bill Gates?
Yeah. Are you sure you want to hear it? I think that Bill was an intelligent guy. I think he's an awfully acquisitive guy. I think he's a pretty narcissistic, sort of a sociopathic guy. I don't underestimate his intellect, certainly, but he had a lot of advantages. I mean, his father was a millionaire, and he had all those little computers to play with when he was a kid. Someone in my position, I never could have done what Bill Gates did because I didn't have that kind of upbringing. But there he is, and he set out methodically taking over the healthcare industry. I mean, and it's a remarkable achievement. You got to respect the guy who can do that. Gates is very adept at that kind of thing. But he's too obviously a shill for the vaccine companies. I mean, here he is. He wants this entire COVID-19 pandemic that we've had. It's hard to say where it came from. It looks like it came out of a lab in Wuhan. But one thing that we know for sure is that a lot of people are trying to they're trying to exploit it. They want to bring about things like, the Great Reset, ID 2020. There are just all kinds of bad things that they're trying to make happen using the pandemic as a pretext. And I think we're in terrible trouble because of that. And I think that is one of the things that has to end.
So let's watch this little clip from your highly esteemed friend, Bill Gates. Just kidding. Let's watch this little clip. I'd like to get your feedback.
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world where you'll have some countries that won't have it under control. Sadly, you don't want to completely block off the ability for those, people to go there and come back and move around. So eventually there will be sort of this digital immunity proof that will help facilitate the global reopening up.
So right there, we hear Bill Gates sharing exactly what you just said. People using the pandemic, the COVID, and the need for a vaccine for control. He talked about having a digital proof of immunity. My question is, for everything you obviously already shared about Bill Gates, and yeah, with your upbringing, I know from researching you, born in California, poor, skipped grades, you're bullied initially. But again, you're the smartest and probably the most intelligent person alive today for sure. For you to not have the same advantages that Bill Gates did growing up, in $1 million with his dad as a millionaire and all those advantages, to now see where he's at front and center stage with this pandemic, and to understand what his intentions are, what he shared. The video you saw when he posted the video, and whoever posted the video, they edited out the last portion. That's why the last portion was added just in audio, but that was obviously still Bill Gates speaking. How does that translate as well with everything else we just shared underneath the Joe Biden? And most likely, and I've shared it over and over again on my show, that Joe will probably wind up falling too ill to be president within the first year, maybe even 6 months, and we'll have Kamala Harris as president. How does all of this play together underneath the Biden-Kamala Harris administration?
Well, I think they're loyal Bill Gates employees, and they might get rich out of this. But, listening to Gates talk about, proof of immunity, we don't have a vaccine where this virus, whatever it is, mutates very rapidly. They've already got strains. They don't know whether the strains are going to be, you're going to be immunized against them by the vaccine. So there can be no proof of immunity because we don't even know if we can arrange immunity yet. And the proof of immunity, of course, is the idea that you can be injected or something, or have to have a tracking application on your phone, or be tracked by 5G, so that they can see you as a little blip on a screen. And they know where you're going every second of every day. That micromanagerial control is something that people like Gates specialize in. They don't feel good unless they have it. It's like wealth and power are means to control, and control is like a drug, and they're like addicts. And the more control you give them, the more they want. They will never be satisfied. It's like an addict. You shoot heroin, pretty soon you need double the amount, then you need quadruple the amount. It's that way with control as well. These people are going to go as far as we allow them to. And we can't let them go any farther because it's already getting oppressive.
Yeah, it is. It's gone way too far. It seems like the only thing that we've got right now going for us are social media. That's why at the beginning of my show, I told my audience to text the message David to 53445 to make sure they stay connected. I try to get this information out. A lot of my friends have tried to get information on several of these topics out, and they're banned. Social media bans them. Parler's taken off the App Store. Their servers are taken down. We are in the fight, it seems, for our life and for our country right now.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm a person. I've been banned from, Wikipedia, Quora. I was at one point kicked off Facebook. They eventually let me back on. I mean, I know exactly what this feels like, and it's reprehensible. It's censorship. I mean, it's an abrogation of the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of expression, as well as religion. I mean, you say the wrong things, you praise President Trump, you express doubt in the election, and suddenly you're deplatformed and you're gone. Right? That we can't function as a nation like this. These social media are parts of our political infrastructure now. We need them for political discourse. And by censoring them like this, they're stopping them from being used for neutral political discourse, and they're interfering with our entire political process. Now, they're not supposed to be able to do that because it's antithetical to the very idea of democracy. And it's inimical to our constitutional republic. We can't tolerate it. Something has to be done. And that's one thing that if the president stays, president, I hope he attends to it immediately. Certainly if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris get in there, they're just going to encourage it. It's going to become worse. Pretty soon we won't be able to say anything without being threatened with Gitmo or what have you. It's a ridiculous situation, and we can't tolerate it.
Yeah, we can't, it's the question is, what do we do? What do we do and where do we go? What's your final thoughts, final words with everything that's been said, with where we're at right now as a country, as a man that obviously believes that God can still bring a miracle? What should we be doing right now?
Well, we should be basically standing up for what we have and trying to keep it at any cost. Because once we lose this country, we lose our Constitution, there is no more hope anymore, because the entire world will be locked down under a kind of a tyrannical system where we can no longer speak the truth. And if you can't speak the truth, then you can't realize the truth. You can't tell the truth about reality. You can't even tell the truth about yourself. You can't fathom the relationship between yourself and reality, and you can't live in a viable, sustainable way on planet Earth. We have to stop this. I mean, there's got to be something that we can do, and we've got to listen to people who know what it is that we can do. And we've got to listen to people who actually understand the nature of what's happening. And I could go into great length in terms of the theory of how causation works and how things like this happen and how they can be prevented. But that's a can of worms. I mean, that's technical stuff. But, I'm one of the people who understands something about what's going on here. There are others as well. We need to listen to them, and we need to steel ourselves and collect our resolve to resist what is happening to us. Because if we go along with it, we're sunk.
I hear you, my brother. I hear you. We've got to do everything that we can. And I know that's pray and it's take action. And it's not just stick our heads in the sand and hope that everything's just going to work out. We are all alive right now in this moment in time in history for a reason, and we all have a part to play.
Precisely.
So, Chris, I know that you've got your own. You pull up this on the screen here, Facts About Reality with Chris Langan. Your website is www.ctmu.org. I hope my audience goes and checks that out. You're on ctmuradio.com. You've got a podcast at patreon.com/CTMU, at Twitter, Real Chris Langan, and Gab. You're on Gab. A lot of people flocking to Gab. I tried to get on there over the weekend, and it was too bogged down. At Chris Langan. So, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. Very enlightening, and an absolute honor to have you on my show today.
Well, the honor is mutual. I feel the same way. Thank you very much for this opportunity, David, and hopefully we'll talk to you again one of these days.
Absolutely. Would love to have you back on and talk to you again in the future.
Okay.
All right.
Take it easy.
Friends, there you have it. I don't know how much crisper, cleaner, and concise it could come, and from the most intelligent person alive, potentially maybe ever alive. That's a human, but he knows his stuff. Please share this message. Share it on all the social media platforms you can. Share the podcast if you're listening to this via the David J. Harris Jr. podcast. Pray for our country. Pray for our president. Pray for a miracle, and don't lose hope. And one final thought, get to mypillow.com and use that code Trump2020. I know you'll enjoy whatever you get. God bless you. Thank you again so much. We'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.
My name is David J. Harris Jr. Join me and millions of Americans around the country as we embrace liberty and freedom. This is the David J. Harris Jr. Show.